Hi, this is Jeff from the Ozark Mountains, that's in Missouri, in the USA. This is part 2 of a two-part series where we're taking a look at an odd Commodore 128 and 1571 disk drive that was made in West Germany, but to North American specifications. That is 120 volts with NTSC video output. We'll finish the refurbishment of the Commodore 128, we'll do some retro biting, we'll clean it up, and we'll put it all back together. Then we'll do a mini refurb on the 1571 drive and see if we can get to the bottom of the weird 110 220 volt voltage selection. Then toward the end of the video, we'll get some insider information from someone who used to be with Commodore about why these machines exist. Let's jump right in. Here are just a few of the circuit boards I've had made recently by PCBWay, who is nice enough to sponsor this video. So whether you need a few boards or a lot of boards, check out PCBWay. So head on over to PCBWay and get your instant quote on standard circuit boards, flex circuit boards, assembly, and they now also offer rapid prototyping, so you can get your mechanical parts made as well. That's an awesome service. So for your next project, head on over to PCBWay. Well, I think the first thing we'll do is pull the keyboard unit out of the top case, and that'll allow us to clean both case halves in the sink and make it a little easier to get the keycaps off. I've got a bucket of water here set to the side that we can throw the keycaps in. There's only, I think, about half a dozen screws here. I'll hold this keyboard in the frame. If you're ever confused when you get a little piece like this and you're not sure what side the screw went on, if you look, you'll be able to see the indentation from the screw pressing on it and when you tightened it on one side. So it's kind of a good double check. But at any rate, we got our keyboard out now. Now we have 3 locking switches that we need to take these leads loose from. I'm going to grab the wire on this side and heat it up and just slip that right up over the post. It's only around there, half a turn, so this isn't too difficult. Got my bucket of soapy water, just dish soap, washing up liquid, whatever you want to call it. And I'll slip my keycap puller over there and then turn it so it's catching the corners. Give that a very gentle wiggle. Oh my goodness. I always have, there we go. I have the hardest time with the C128 and Amiga type keys. Just pop the keycap in the water and take your spring and put it in your spring bucket, and do that with the rest of them. It's not too complicated. It's not too exciting. Now we have all those pesky keycaps off of there. We can flip this over and remove 1.21 giga screws. So we can clean the underside of this board and get the whole frame nice and cleaned up. And thanks to the magic of video, we only have 2 screws left. There we go. We've got all our latching switches disconnected there. So we should be able to pull this guy right up. There we go. How about that? Okay, this is one of the carbon coated boards. So we don't really want to do anything with these. We'll give it a quick wipe with a soft cloth, maybe a little alcohol, and that is about it. You do not want to scrub on these carbon contacts. Now we've got all our key switches right here. These are individual stems, and this is basically the same design as the Amiga, except for this top row. The blue ones are different. So we can check the resistance on a few of these with the resistance checker. I'll go get that out, and we'll just double check a few to make sure everything's okay. I think these will probably be fine. Then I'll clean them all with a little bit of alcohol, and we should be fine. Oh, take note that right here, there is a little tiny spring. Be sure not to lose that guy. It's one of the top keypad keys. It'd be the top right keypad key if this was right side up. Okay, we've got our handy resistance tester from Mitsumi Keys. It has a spot for the Amiga and C128 type keys and a spot to fit the C64 keys. This is just basically a set of gold-plated contacts at the right spacing. And the general idea is we pop our key in here, press slightly down, and check the resistance. Let's see what it says on the meter. Zoom back out a little bit. All right. This is one of the upper row function keys, and I press down lightly, and I have about 100 ohms. That's excellent. And we'll check the space bar. And we have about 130 ohms. That's also excellent. Now anything less than 1K will actually work just fine on these and on the C64. If these have had oil contamination or something like that, you may have to clean them. I did a whole separate video on that, which I will link into below. I think I would just clean these in place with a little alcohol and a cotton swab to clean off any dirt that may have collected over the years. And then we'll give that keyboard PCB a quick wipe down as well. By the way, if you would like one of these, I have the plans and the boards and the 3D print files on my GitHub. I'll put the link below. I also have a few of these left on my website, and I'll put the link down there as well. I found it very, very handy. That way you know that your keys are good before you get the whole keyboard reassembled again. So just a little alcohol and a Q-tip. Just give each key a wipe, do them in order so you don't lose track. That's all there is to it. Okay, I am just about finished up here. I've also gone ahead and pulled each plunger out and just given it a dry wipe. None of these are really that dirty. But while I had this apart, I kind of wanted to give everything a check. If you've got a really grungy keyboard, you're probably going to pull all these plungers out and give them a good clean. But this one wasn't too bad. So now we've got this section done, and we can move on to the circuit board itself. Okay, so we've got our keyboard circuit board here. Again, this has the carbon-coated contacts. We don't want to scrub on here. I've got a little alcohol on a clean cloth. Just going to give everything a very light wipe to get rid of any dirt. Try to stay away from all these soldered sections right here so I don't snag my rag. When you're reinstalling the circuit board back onto the keyboard frame, make sure that little spring we talked about earlier is still in place. Now for this top part of the keyboard, I will just spray some mild cleaner on an old piece of t-shirt and give it a wipe down. Again, if this was a very dirty keyboard, you might have to strip this whole thing to really give this a scrub, but this one's not too bad. This part isn't real technical or real complicated either. I'll just grab a keycap, give it a scrub in the bucket here to try to keep the mess contained. Get all four sides, a little on the bottom, a little on the top. Just like that. I'll do that with all 100 whatever keys that are on this thing. Now we need to clean up the case, and for that I'm in my spacious downstairs bathroom. So I can only bring in one half of the case at a time actually. And I'm just going to use some dish soap. I've got it kind of diluted here, and a magic eraser, and an old toothbrush. A little warm water, some elbow grease. It'll clean right up. Just use the magic eraser for the couple stubborn spots. And we don't want to forget the inside. It's the downside to using the bathroom sink. It's hard to get everything flushed with water. And I'll dry it off the best I can with a paper towel. I'll take it out to the garage and blow it down with the air compressor to get all the water out of the nooks and crannies. I am just finishing up popping these keycaps on these nifty holders for retrobrighting. A friend of mine from Twitter developed these, and he put the STL files and Fusion 360 files on Thingiverse. I will link to it down below. It was nice of him to include the design files because it let me make little single ones like this for some other research I'm doing into retrobrighting. So we'll get these in the retrobrite brew, and we'll turn our attention to that 1571 floppy drive. Here we've got our floppy drive. This is in really good shape. It doesn't look like it's really yellowed much. It has the drive transit card in there, which is also really nice. We know the head hasn't been bouncing around. And if you recall, this has the weird 120, 220 volt sticker on here, which is unusual. And the manual doesn't go into great detail on the power supply in these guys, so we'll pull this apart and see what's really inside here. So we just need some Phillips screws taken out. And you'll also notice that this label also has the same German statement on here about EMI compliance. And I promised somebody on Facebook I would attempt to pronounce this, and I believe it's something close to Funkentstört. So, you know, laugh at me, tell me how wrong I am, but that's about as close as I'm going to get to it, I think. Well, we got half of the screws out. There we go. All four of them. I'll see if we can tease that off of there. There we go. This looks good inside. It's just a little dirty. That'll clean up nice though. Oh, this is nice and clean inside. Wow, that looks really, really nice. If we turn our attention to the power supply here, we have our power entry module, transformer, a couple linear voltage regulators, a big aluminum heat sink, nothing special, 2 sets of 4 diodes for rectification, a little bit of capacitance. Right here it does say 110, 220, 110, 220, and it goes through the type of fuse. So right now, this is actually strapped for 220 volts. It's on P1 and P3. Strapped for 220 volts. It says for 110 volts, it should be 400 milliamps. For 220 volts, it should be 200 milliamps. And what we have in there, get a little teeny tiny screwdriver there and pop him out, and we have 400 milliamp, 250 volts. Okay, so that looks like it's set up for 110 volt on the fuse, but this label down here is rather confusing as far as where the jumper goes. So the black goes through the fuse, so it's definitely the blue wire here that we change. Well, I guess if we look at this black sticker, like here, and ignore this silk screen, it says 110 volts on P3, 220 on P2. So I guess maybe this is strapped for 110 volts. And it says it is power supply 1571, assembly 325188 Rev A. In contrast, here is a 1571 that I know came from the United States. And you can see this guy has a switching power supply. It's got an extra shield here over the drive. They're both Mitsumi/Neutronics drives. And this one actually just says 117 volts, 350 milliamps, made in Japan. Now, from what I can see of the circuit board through here, the circuit boards are exactly the same. All the plugs are in the same place. Same chips from what I can see. It's just we have a linear power supply in here and a switch type here. And this one is about half the size of this one. The weight's not a lot different. This one might be a little lighter, but it's got some extra shielding here. So anyhow, that is kind of interesting. They are definitely a little bit different, and these have a unique power supply. Now, if you have a German-made C128, I would love to know what type of power supply your unit has in it. Is it a linear supply like this, or do you have a switching supply? Let me know in the comments down below. I think as clean as our drive is here, what I'm going to do is just clean the heads. Since this is a 1571, it does have a top and bottom head. And we'll also lubricate the rails. And then we'll test it out when we put our computer back together. And that'll be that. As clean as this looks, I suspect it'll work just fine. This top head is a little more difficult to get to. You can kind of lift up a little bit on it, but you don't want to go too far. There we go. And the rails right here that these ride on look pretty good. They are not really dirty. Oh, we've got a little packing foam hitching a ride here. Let's see if I can get that out. There we go. That could have got into the works and caused a problem. Okay, I've got just a dab of grease here. You just want the smallest amount. Just smear on the rails. Manually rotate it here from end to end. This area in the back. Like so. Make sure I don't have too much on there. And we'll pull it back the other direction. There we go. Wipe off any excess. As this drive is really not very dirty at all, I just got a little mild cleanser here. This is like Formula 409 or something like that. Just spray some on a rag and wipe it down. There's just one little spot right there I can't quite get off. Well, it's funny how the computer keys were quite yellowed, but this was not. It could be a slightly different mix of plastic. This may have been better protected from direct sunlight. That type of thing. Okay, set the cover back on there. And I'll flip him upside down again. Drop our screws into place. And remember the old trick, counterclockwise till you feel it drop down into place. Sometimes you can hear the pop too. Okay, we've got our drive cleaned up. I'm going to go ahead and put the transit card in to hold the heads in place. And now, as soon as we get everything done under the Retro Bright brew, we'll get it dried off and put back together. For me, it'll be a few days, but for you, it'll just be a few seconds, so hang on. Here's a quick look at the retrobrighting process on this C128. I'll be doing a whole special episode on retrobright in the next few weeks, so we'll talk more about it then. I'm just using a warm hydrogen peroxide solution, and those nifty key racks didn't hold up to the hydrogen peroxide very well. The keycaps kept popping off and floating to the surface, so I wound up just putting them in a bag. And, the top and bottom cover went in separately due to space constraints. Here I am using some 303 aerospace protectant sprayed liberally on the keys and the case to keep them from yellowing in the future. I first laid out the keycaps in order and then put on the springs a few at a time and popped the keycaps in place. The longer keys with the metal bar underneath require a little bit of fiddling to fit the bar into place. It should also be noted that this space bar has two springs, and they're different than the rest of the springs on the keyboard. Installing the keyboard back into the top case is just the reverse of taking it out. Take note of this funny little plastic bracket that holds the power LED in. It's kind of a fiddly process to install the keyboard and hold the power LED in this little plastic bracket all at the same time. That looks great, and now it's time to take off that Cat 10 tape that we put over the label to protect it during the retrobright process. This plastic mounting post was cracked from having too large a screw inserted into it. To fix this, I put a little acetone in a small syringe, and I'll dribble that in there and then squeeze it together while it cures. Now comes the process of installing the circuit board. We'll start out with the bottom RF shield and then the circuit board, of course. Then I'll make sure to put some heatsink paste on the top RF shield and then pop it into place. All the screws around the periphery will be installed, and then I'll twist those little tabs that go around in the front and the side. When we install the top cover, we need to hook up the power LED on the left-hand side and the keyboard cable on the right. Setting the cover off kilter like this gives us access to hook up the ground strap that goes from the keyboard frame to the circuit board. Then, of course, we need to reinstall all the bottom cover screws. Okay, let's fire this thing up and give it a quick test. Turn the drive on here. And the computer. And we're all booted up. One quick test we can do on the drive is to format a disk. So I'll pop a disk in here. And in Basic 7 we can type in header, and yes, you may have noticed I accidentally swapped the E and R keys. I did figure that out and I got it fixed now. Let's call this our 1571 test disk. We'll give it an ID of 42. Drive is always 0, and this is device 8. I think that's right. Are you sure? I am sure. Alright, that sounds good. It's formatting the disk. I did notice one slight flaw in this 1571. There is a tiny crack right at the front of the cover on the top starting to form. So I may take that off and see if it's come through the back yet and drip a little acetone on there to seal that up. I wouldn't want that to chip and come up missing. And hey, do a directory. And 1,328 blocks free. So, yep, that definitely formatted as a 1571 disk. Awesome. Okay, now we've already run the test harness on this and we know everything's fine. I don't have it set up right now with the monitor so I can actually run in the color 80 column mode. We can do one quick thing though. I've got a little adapter in here which just lets us get black and white composite out of the 80 column mode. So if we go and turn on the 80 column display, and if I can find the reset button, we reset that guy. I should have pulled the disk out. Oh well. Oh, duh, Jeffrey. Yes, I need to change my video scaler input here. There we go. Wow. Got to learn how to work the machine. So you can see this doesn't look too bad. Oops. I got two Y's in there, don't I? I cannot see. Go to 10. And that works. I could probably play with this Extron scaler to get that a little better. I don't think the pixel scaling is quite right, but it doesn't look too bad. Yeah, where's my run stop key? Run stop, there it is. Okay. And if I change the scaler back, there we go, and then just reset this guy. Oh. I guess it's been that type of day. I actually hit the power switch instead of the reset. As I was saying, both 40 and 80 column mode work. The disk drive works. It sounds good. It's formatting and reading both sides of the disk. I guess all that's left is to pop a game disk in, play a game. I got out my original Jumpman disc from when I was a kid. Use this on special occasions now. We'll go into 64 mode. I think we could, oops. I think we can just load the first thing on the disk there. There we go. And I'll fast forward through this loading because it's going to take a while. I had to put on my glasses so I could see the screen well enough to play this. Okay, do something simple here, just beginner level. But I will select a faster speed. Oh, that was too fast. And I died. Okay. I'll go down to speed 3 this time. Oh, that's more my speed. Oh, how did that bullet not get me? Wow, I haven't played this game in ages. Definitely not the best pattern. All right, that works. Well, now that we know everything works, let's find out a little bit more about where this funny C128 and 1571 drive came from. What do you think? What is the story then behind our odd Commodore 128 and 1571 disk drive? These were made in Germany, for sale in Germany, but to North American specifications. That is 120 volts and NTSC video output. Now, why would they make such an odd combination? We were correct in our guess it had something to do with the military bases. I reached out to David Pleasance, who was with Commodore for several years, and he confirmed that the German Commodore plant did make machines for sale to the service personnel on the U.S. bases, but they were made to the U.S. specifications, so when they returned home they could take the machines with them. Which is why we have stickers added over the labels to modify them. They used the German type power supply in the 1571 and just put in a different transformer to make it work. To recap, our clues that this Commodore 128 and 1571 drive were a little different were that it had the Made in Germany label, however it did not have a German keyboard. Inside it had an NTSC VIC chip. With the 1571, our first clue was that the standard German product label had been modified with a sticker over the top. When we opened it up, we saw that the standard German power supply had been modified with a different transformer and labels applied over the silkscreen on the circuit board. So this is a somewhat odd combination. I don't know exactly how rare. I imagine there's many thousands of these, or at least there were, but it's not your everyday machine, which is kind of interesting. And I think this machines made for the Army bases might also be the answer behind this odd wedge power supply for Commodore 64 I got a few years ago. It is also 110, 220 volts. Kind of an odd duck. I think we'll do a separate video on this guy because I've got a few other oddball C64 power supplies that we can look at the same time. It would have been interesting if we had gotten a hold of the power supply for this Commodore 128 to see how they did that. Was it a regular North American market power supply? Was it a reworked German market power supply? That would have been interesting to know. I'd also be interested to know if any of you have come across any other Commodore machines that were made in this combination, made in Germany, but to North American specification. I would like to take a moment to say thanks to everyone who helps support these videos through Patreon and other means. Your support is greatly appreciated. You help keep this channel going. If you'd like to find out some more information about that, there are some links in the description down below. If you have any questions or comments, I sure would love to hear from you. You can just drop them in the comments section down below. Oh, as I mentioned before, there will be a special video all about Retrobrite coming up very soon, so be sure to catch that. Well, until next time, bye.